All right, it's already that time of year, P. We're talking week 3 right now, already 2 weeks into the season. We've seen a little bit, haven't seen a lot, but this is also a time when people are looking to take advantage. The sharks in your league, like me and you,
Mhm.
looking to take advantage. And then there's also people who are struggling right now, right? Like looking to potentially sell some players off or maybe get some help for their team. So this is time to start talking buy low, man. Buy low, sell high on fantasy players and trading, man. It's a part of the game, especially right now when we got so many injuries. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces, but it's on us to be able to find the value and kind of anticipate where we can see things heading. So we're going to be talking buy low, sell high for running backs and receivers, but then also getting into like a buy, sell, hold type section here at the end where we can go over early round players and their value. Let's start with the running backs, P. How you know what I'm saying? Just before I get into the running backs, man, how you living, dog? How you doing, bro? How your fantasy teams doing, dog? Talk to me.
Hey, man. Hey, I'm going to tell you like this, man. I got some teams doing good and I got some teams doing bad, boy. And it's, just like you mentioned earlier, dude, everybody's hurt. Everybody's hit with the same bug, the same injury bug. But as long as you don't panic, I think you'll be all right. There's a lot of people talking about waiver this, waiver that based off of these injuries. If you hold your bread, right? You can't spell patience without P, but you also can't spell panic. Nah, nah, but keep it real though. Like just know that if you're feeling hurt with that injury bug, you don't know what to do. Don't panic because there's half of your league feeling the same way. So where everybody's zigging, you got to zag, and that's how you're going to get ahead of the game in this fantasy lifestyle is what I'm trying to tell you.
And I think a common theme that you'll hear from me and P is, taking advantage of some of these early successes, taking advantage of players who are not playing well that have been mainstays for our lineup. So trust the players, trust yourself, right? This is a 2-game sample size. If we were talking about this in week 14 and 15, it would have no substance. So you'd be like, oh, I don't care. I'm about to go to fantasy playoffs. So just pretend this is 2 weeks in the year. And in your head, you got to know, okay, I spent an entire offseason doing homework, validating all my picks. Like you did a lot of homework. So trust some of that, even when things look dire. But let's start at the running back position, P, where obviously buy low is something I think you and I do very well at when it comes to buying low. I want to start. I'll go ahead and lead this one off, man. And one of my favorite buy low running backs right now is one of my favorite players overall. He's going outside of the top 12 running backs right now. Bijan Robinson. There's a lot of people who drafted him early with the number 1 pick, the number 2 pick, top 10 pick, and they might be concerned on his value because we haven't seen him get into the end zone yet. But when you look at the usage for Bijan, there's literally nothing to be worried about. The good news is we're seeing his floor on a consistent basis, which seems to be about 15 to 17 fantasy points a week. That's at floor. So you add in a touchdown, you add in a chunk play, which we haven't really seen a big Bijan 50, 60-yard run yet. We ain't seen a 40-yard reception. You add that in, this is a player that if you're worried about him, you don't deserve him. You don't deserve to have Bijan if you're worried about him. This is a player you should be actively looking to buy Bijan Robinson right now, who showed his worth on this team in multiple circumstances throughout the win. Just hasn't seen the fantasy success. If Bijan had 2 touchdowns right now, he'd be the RB3. You wouldn't even be worried about it. So multiple touchdown days are coming. Better second half schedule coming for Bijan Robinson. He's obviously one of my favorite buy low guys right now.
Yeah, I like that. Bijan, I like the floor Bijan showing. Just like you said, the work that he's getting is dope. And how he's just carving out these chunk plays, that's something to be happy about. The touchdowns will come. My first buy low running back I have is actually Derrick Henry. Like when you're watching Derrick Henry, he just doesn't look. He looks slow. I feel like they're working him in. They're trying to figure out how they're going to work him in. The first game he had was 13 attempts. This most recent one, it looks like in a dogfight against the Raiders, 18 attempts. Still hasn't cracked that 100-yard mark. Right now, he's hovering around RB 22, I believe, and I think there are a lot more better days ahead. This is somebody who, in the preseason, you had to assume that he's going to have 15 plus touchdowns. Hasn't showed that yet. They haven't really dominated a team yet, and I think the Ravens as themselves are gaining their stride, or they will. They're 0-2 now, but they're going to hit that point where they're gaining their stride. They're choking teams out, and that's when you're going to see the best of Derrick Henry. He hasn't busted off one of his signature swing passes with a stiff arm, busted for an 80-yard gain, touchdown. That's what you want to see. That's why you invested in Derrick Henry, to get touchdowns and to bully players. He hasn't done that just yet. That's why he's floating around RB22. Realistically, he can jump about 8-9 spaces in the RB game and be around like RB12, RB13. That's what you're going to do. And in order to make that game, he's going to have huge games. So right now is a really good time to buy low on him, just based off what people have predicted him to be and what he's not. They're low on him. So you can go and grab that dude.
I think this is a good buy low, man. And it's the one thing with him is he doesn't catch passes. So that's kind of the negative for him. And we haven't seen the Ravens do what they typically do, and that's beat teams down. They're 0-2. So I think when you can find teams that are not playing up to par in regular football, there's a very good correlation with that, and buying low on fantasy as well, because the media, you're hearing things on TV, you read the paper, nobody read the fucking paper no more, but you read in your fantasy stuff. It's like there's negative connotation. You start to feel that. So Derrick Henry, man, King Henry, I think a lot of people look at the age when it comes to him, and we're already like, I don't know about this guy. And then if you took him early, you might be double, kind of thinking again, like, man, maybe I made the wrong decision. So I like that there. Another buy low for me is somebody else we took early, though, P. And he's lost some red zone work to David Montgomery, his backup, Jahmyr Gibbs. And listen, if we would have had the same conversation about Jahmyr Gibbs last year at this exact same time, we'd be like, oh, man, he was a bust in the third round. He was a bust in the fourth round whenever we took him, and he ended up being a top 3 running back on the year. And Jahmyr Gibbs, what does he bring? He brings the pass-catching upside. He brings the big playability. And don't forget, Gibbs is dealing with an injury coming into the season. And it's not like the Lions aren't aware of that. What are they doing? They're slowing him into his role. They're splitting this work a little bit more. In the second half, it would not be surprising to see Jahmyr Gibbs take on a bigger workload, as he did last year. And guess what? The team plays indoor. 14 of the first 16 games they play this year are indoors. So it's like, to me, I'm not worried at all about Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think this is a good time if you are trying to upgrade your running back room with all the injuries right now to running backs, just in general. This is a player I think you could target and probably give up one of the guys that you picked up off waivers, your Jordan Masons, your J.K. Dobbins, somebody like that. Pair him together with another high-performing player or maybe another big name. Pair them two together and go get yourself an elite back in Jahmyr Gibbs, who really doesn't have a lot of injury concern as well. So that's another reason why I like Gibbs. Smaller back, doesn't really have the injury type of frame because of his receiving work.
Yeah, no, love that. And it's going to be expense at Montgomery, I think. Like you say, they're working him back in, and just wait till he gets a stride. Does he even have a touchdown just yet?
I don't think Gibbs don't even have a touchdown yet. I don't think so.
Man, it's big days coming. Big days coming. So my next buy low is somebody who kind of follows the same mold as Derrick Henry when people are looking at him, right? I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor. You would assume that he's going to be doing better, or he would have been doing better, the first few games, right? And he hasn't been bad, but sitting at RB22 is not what you drafted him for. He's had a 100-yard game most recently. His first game was not good, and and he only has one touchdown. What I like to see from the Green Bay game, from them playing from behind, are the targets. He had 4 targets, which is good. That's not what you expected. Only caught 2, but for 32 yards. Not bad, right? He had a pretty good game last week. I see more of that coming. I really see Jonathan Taylor being in the mold of a top 12 running back, right? So, and if I'm feeling like that, then the owner of Jonathan Taylor is feeling like that. He's feeling like, man, he should be better. Right? Man, there's these players that are going off. Man, this is not what I envisioned. Is this going to be like this for the rest of the season? You have to, as a shark, you have to be able to take advantage of that. Target these big name players who are primarily mainstays in the past and take advantage of those players, right? Take advantage of those teams. And you want to go and seek players like Jonathan Taylor because the rushing upside is there. The rushing touchdowns are going to come. and it's just a matter of time. But you have to jump before those times are actually here.
Now that's real. And, I feel like with Jonathan Taylor, with Gibbs, Bijan, Derrick Henry, these are names, maybe they are still top 24 backs. Maybe they're still up there, right? Jahmyr Gibbs averaging 17 fantasy points a week still. Like, it's not like it's bad performance, but what it is, perception is reality a lot of times. And when you spend the high draft capital pick on a player and they're not performing, when we see Alvin Kamara going for 4 touchdowns, we see some of these other guys playing really well. Devon Achane showing out on a Thursday night. Then you start to think, you get buyer's remorse. You're like, man, should I have really taken that player? And that's what you want to do. Not every manager in your league is going to panic that same way, but those are the people who we are targeting. We're targeting the ones who maybe have a little doubt and concern about their pick, and that's why you go after your Bijans, your Gibbs, your Derrick Henry, your Jonathan Taylor. One more, though, that's not an elite name, somebody that you got in the mid-rounds. Jahmyr White is another name that I'd be looking to buy low on right now. Antonio Pierce came out with a vote of confidence and said, listen, we want to get this guy 20 touches. And I don't think that the Raiders would have gone into this year thinking that Alexander Mattison was the guy that they wanted to give 20 to 25 touches to. I also don't think they signed him with intentions of this thing being a split backfield. They got a win last week, and I think that was the biggest concern is, can this team get a win on the board? Now we have the ability to establish the run. Now we have a little bit more of a leash to be able to make mistakes. And I think Jahmyr White, who we saw last year at the end of the year, he was solid. He was solid. I mean, he was having 100-yard games, and I think they want to get him volume because that makes things easier for everybody else on this team. So you're not having to pass 40 times with Minshew to Brock Bowers and Myers and Devontae Adams and all these guys. So for me, Jahmyr White is a player that, maybe at the RB2 level, it's a little bit much to ask of him right now, but he could still be at RB3 for your team. And there's somebody who's really panicking on Jahmyr White, probably questioning whether they want to get rid of him fully or not. They're like, yo, is it time to drop Jahmyr White? It's probably, their thought process. So for me, Jahmyr White is also a buy low guy.
Yeah. No, Jahmyr White, definitely, right? They did not they definitely didn't invest in the Jahmyr White. Giving him the keys this offseason just to hand it to Alexander Mattison, right? Who we know in the past is really just a guy. So, but yeah, no, we can move on. I do got one more name I want to jump in really quick. Really good buy low, kind of like a sneaky one. He may even be on waivers, but Ty Chandler with the Minnesota Vikings. This Vikings team looks better than advertised. They can potentially, with that defense, they can be up. And it looks like he's actually splitting work 50-50 with Aaron Jones, as we've seen how they did the Niners, right? So they have a really good running game. They can orchestrate plays really well. And if they're going up on teams, then that means they're probably going to rest some of the older veterans, like an Aaron Jones. So Ty Chandler, where he comes in is he could really fill in, be a contributor to any fantasy team, and you can get him for like pennies on the dollar right now. So somebody you want to keep in mind, Tyson Chandler.
Tyson Chandler, the former
Ty Chandler.
Yo, you know what I'm saying? Hey, we've been doing these shows where I've been messing up names too. I've been doing Jawan Jennings instead of Jawan Johnson instead of Jawan Jennings. I've been doing Carson Strong instead of Carson Steele, thinking of like the old Philly quarterback. Like, it's crazy, bro. There's so many names right now. And that's the thing I would say with all these running backs and just injuries right now. We're gonna get more unconventional names thrown our way. So just know right now this is a volatile time in fantasy. But if you are a smart, savvy veteran owner, you can find value in these guys, especially at the running back position.